Hello and welcome to the Noakes Sydney Gold Coast Yacht Race 2019 live stream. It's the first race of the 2019 Audi Centre Sydney Blue Water Point Score for the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia. Now, it's a fabulous day here on the harbour. The 34th annual Noakes Sydney to Gold Coast Yacht Race, where shortly we'll see 76 competitors set their spinnakers and head out of the harbour before they turn left and go down to the Gold Coast. Now, the sun is shining and the forecast is for a light southerly start, so we should be seeing some spectacular scenes across the harbour. Now, my name's Olivia Price and I'm from the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia, and I'm joined here in the commentary boat by Warwick Rooklin. Now, Warwick's a veteran ocean racer and an 18-foot skiff commentator as well. So past line honours winner of the Sydney to Hobart in 1986, the Sydney Mooloolaba and Brisbane to Gladstone yacht races. Warwick has also won the North American Melges 24 Championship and is two-time national champion in the class. His success also extends to dinghy racing, winning regattas in 49ers as well as 18-foot skiffs. Welcome, Woz.
Who wrote all that?
That's an extensive history. I'm glad we've got the legend here himself.
Well, what we do have here is a very slippery commentating position. Our normal vessel is out of action, and so we've improvised in the best possible way. And we're bringing it to you live, all tacked together, but the images should work well. But as you said, Olivia, just awesome winter's day. Yesterday would have been a shocker for the start. There was no breeze at all, but the southerlies come through and cooperated weather-wise, and we're going to have a really nice start heading out to the Sydney Heads today. I imagine that the leading boats, and mind you, it's probably worth noting that this year there are no super maxis, no 100-footers. And so the maximum size boats are in the 60-foot range, and I probably would expect that maybe Wild Oats 10, who's got sort of a mix, I believe, of the Wild Oats 11 team, Mark Richards skipping that boat, Adrian Carlin navigating. They will be very quick in these conditions, and I sort of expect them to maybe get out the heads first. And awesome competition in the TP52s, eh?
Yes, so there's 11 TP52s in the 2019 edition of the race, and they're from 3 different states. So we've got Ambition from Victoria, so they're one of the, Chris Dare is one of the newest owners in the class. He bought the TP52 just late last year and has done some racing down there and is encouraging more yacht owners down there to buy bigger boats and get a bit more competitive. So it's great to see them up here for the start of the Noakes Sydney Gold Coast Yacht Race.
Well, they're almost going to have, even, I was going to say, go on and say they're almost a one design type race for 2 days. And even though the generations of TPs probably span over about 12 years, most of them are going to be inside of each other if they all tend to go the same way up the race course. And, you know, talking to a few of the navigators and skippers this morning, I think what we're looking at is, you know, get out of the harbour the best you can. I'd imagine that most of the favoured boats will be starting down towards the pin end of the line, with a bit of east-southeast in this breeze. And then once they're offshore, probably stay on starboard jibe, so heading out to shore, offshore, and then talking to Gordon Maguire off Ichiban, who's the sailing master on that boat. He's sort of thinking, you know, maybe a jibe tonight, so one long starboard jibe out to shore, jibe tonight, head back into shore, and then it's going to be the full traditional coastal race. And just I did a bit of a dock walk prior to us coming out, and that's sort of the general feeling I'm getting from a lot of the different boats. So a lot of manoeuvres, probably starting tomorrow morning, or, you know, early hours of tomorrow, and pretty narrow band in which they're going to have to work in because of the East Coast current, the old Nemo situation. Want to get out of that. And so I think, you know, there'll be, you know, plenty of people sort of bumping off the beaches and not wanting to go too far offshore and then back again.
Well, wealth of knowledge, and you've heard it here first as to what's going to happen. Thanks, Woz Rooklin. I do want to let everyone know that we are getting social at the Noakes Sydney Gold Coast Yacht Race, so please make sure that you use the hashtag Noakes Sydney Gold Coast when you are posting photos or any updates from onboard yachts or supporters watching. Now, there's plenty of spectator boats out here because it is a glorious Sydney Harbour day. Now, Noakes has been sponsoring this race, started last year, and they've this year signed another 4-year deal. So the Noakes Group is Australia's leading general marine company, and it sets the standard for the industry best practice in vessel maintenance and repairs for all types of boats. So there's plenty of types of boats out here. So for more information, visit noakes.net.au.
Yeah, well, Sean's been a great supporter of yachting over tens and tens of years since he was a young guy. Very enthusiastic. Basically lives for the water. Lives for his ocean racing and sailing, and his yard is, as you said, best practice. I know that over the last few years, there's been a lot of investment in time and energy and financially to bring everything up to best standards. I mean, they're doing a lot of the defence work as well, which is obviously of the highest standard, and they're still doing a lot of the smaller stuff and yacht racing stuff as well. So very active yard over there.
And additionally, the 18-foot skiffs as well. So a strong promoter in youth sailing, having the Noakes Youth 18-foot skiff as well as the Noakes Sailing that Sean himself sails. So Sean Langman is actually has his yacht in this race. So Naval Group is one of the bigger boats in this race. So who are you looking at for line honours, Was?
Well, it's going to, on paper, it's got to come out of the 60-footers.
Yes.
and certainly Sean's in there with that one, with the Naval Group.
Keeping in mind, Wild Oats 10 has won this on line honours twice before.
Yeah. Well, the thing that the Oats has got over, let's say, the Naval Group or Chinese Whispers that Dave Griffith has just purchased, and got Michael Coxon in the afterguard there and really ramping that up.
Yep.
Well, the Oats has got the Canning Keel.
Yes.
So, a little bit more riding moment there. And as we were just saying, there's another 60. It's an old Rockall Pew 60, which, on time could do okay against the other boats. So it's going to come out of the 60s. But I think in this lighter running, even though they're sort of forecasting a little bit more breeze tonight, it's basically going to be a mid-air downwind race. I would expect the Oats to be hot favourite. That's what I'd be putting my money on for line honours. But the handicap thing, who knows?
Yes, the forecast is a bit tricky. We heard this morning at the Bureau of Meteorology compulsory race briefing that it's going to be quite light for the next 2.5 days, and then potentially a little southerly coming through for the smaller boats. How do you think that's going to play out in terms of the overall IRC and PHS winds? Because the bigger boats will make it in that light southeasterly, but there's a little bit more wind coming up the coast come Tuesday morning.
No, you're dead right, Olivia. It's I'm getting actually a little bit of mixed messages when I did my little dock walk, and the briefing was kind of saying, offshore tonight or late this afternoon, that they might get up to sort of 18 knots, and then as they come back to the coast a little bit softer. And then I was talking to Albie Pratt, who's on a Mills 40. Well, I can't remember the actual production, but it's basically a Mills 40. And he's thinking that they may actually be able to take advantage of that southerly. But it's a little bit far out, the forecast, from that end. So it's really going to depend on how that forecast develops, how accurate it is, and when that southerly arrives, to whether the smaller boats can get a big enough lift up, or turbo effect, let's say, to whether this will be won by one of the smaller boats, or I would imagine out of one of the TP52s. That, for me, that's kind of where it's going to be at.
Yeah, so as we mentioned before, the TP52 fleet has 11 in their fleet, and it's really a race within a race, because in order to win the race overall, you've got to win your division, and you've got to win in this TP52s, you've got to win against them as well. So it really is tricky. Do you think that I know that each boat has their own strength. I was talking to a couple of the different skippers
So I've got my son who runs the boat, basically sailing with me. So this will be his only second ocean race. He's only 19, so it's been a bit of a, I suppose, learning curve for him, having the responsibility of maintaining and managing a boat. But I think it's been good for him, and he's really enjoying it. And then my daughter, who's 17, sails with in Melbourne, but she's not doing the race. She didn't really want to come, so that's fine. So I can deal with that. And then we've got a lot of my son's friends on board, and even my friends, I suppose, from over the years from previous boats. Oh, look, I'd been looking around for a while, so, and then I've had 50 footers before, so I was kind of after a modern boat, and then also after a boat that, I think we'd enjoy sailing. So obviously, TP52s a lot in the country. They're obviously good IRC boats, and they're quick. They're modern. So I suppose ticked a lot of boxes in relation to all that, and yeah, it hasn't probably disappointed from that regard. It feels like we're sailing a big dinghy most of the time, which is probably why I wanted to buy the boat. Yeah, we're from Melbourne, so there's no big boats in Melbourne. So I've kind of taken the big leap of faith and decided to I suppose be one of the first guys to purchase a 52 footer in Melbourne again. It's good fun. I mean, we're enjoying it. From the point of view of being based out of Melbourne, we've really enjoyed the sailing and that. So, we're kind of hoping when I bought the boat that we might get a couple others to join us in Melbourne. Hasn't happened yet, but still hold out hope that we won't sail around by ourselves all the time down there. But yeah, if you enjoy the competition like I do, and people that sail with me do, why not kind of step into a class where it's pretty competitive, So the race forecast looks like it'll be downwind, so we're kind of probably happy about that aspect of it. Probably would want a little bit more breeze and forecast to kind of fall into the kind of strong aspect of the design that we anticipate, where we'd be possibly have an edge over some of the others. But then, then you've got to go the right way, you've got to stay out of the tide, you've got to hope the wind doesn't drop out on the shore. Having done this race before, they're all things that can, you can go from being 5 mile in front to 5 mile behind in a few hours pretty quickly.
It's it's a little bit of a surprise. I wasn't expecting us to be the biggest boat in it, but it's turned out that way. Certainly not the fastest boat in it, but the biggest boat in it, and we'll just see how it goes. Yeah, we'll barge our way through the start line and then hope for the best. We don't have a huge amount of expectations. It's just a matter of doing the race, getting up there. Again, not really our conditions. It's going to be quite light, and anything that we do have is going to be coming up from astern, so it's not really our conditions, but we'll enjoy it. We'll use this opportunity to tweak the boat in the light air stuff. Like this boat goes trucking in the big airs, and it's not hard to do, but it's the light stuff that we really need to tweak, and that's where sort of we all know that races can be won and lost, and we'll work on that, and we'll get a few little things going that we're sort of working on, and we'll move forward from there. So it's going to be great.
What's your preparation been like in the lead up to this year's race?
Much like the rest of it, keep the boat looking good, shining, or as you can see, a lot of sort of last minute varnish work going on. We stripped the boat out from cruise mode to race mode, so the preparation has been sort of the same as before. It's good. We give the boat a bit of a spring clean, and we just sort of get it sort of a little bit better every time, I think. That's the sort of the plan. But the prep is extensive. It's about 2 weeks of getting it converted over, and then and then we go racing, and we come back and we convert it all back again. The plan is to stay up on the Gold Coast for a little bit, get some work done up there. We'll come back and we'll do some of the smaller short haul stuff in the lead up to Hobart. The plan is we'll have a bit more of a better prep, a more extensive prep this year leading into Hobart. Bird islands, line islands, cabbage trees, that sort of thing, and focus a bit more on the actual performance of the boat rather than getting the boat to qualify for Cat 1.
So have you got a full race crew for the Noakes Sydney Gold Coast Yacht Race?
We do, yeah, about 70% pro crew, and then the rest of it is just guys coming along for a ride. And I think it'll be a good, nice little mix. Get the band back together again. We've got 12 on board, 12 crew coming along, and we've got food for about 40. So we eat quite well, and then that'll be a little bit of yard food as well up there. Yeah, we're certainly not eating the freeze dry again.
On PHS overall, and they're looking for a hat trick. Now, I was speaking to owner Kevin Whelan a couple of days ago, and I think I could list off a whole bunch of gourmet meals that they've prepared. Over 50 meals of lasagna and pork roast with applesauce and some beef ragu. Now, what's it like on board a race yacht?
Well, I don't think they'll be having apple crumble or beef ragu, or maybe they do that in freeze-dried, I don't know. But yeah, it'll be, yeah, they would have had a sandwich, fresh sandwich today. Maybe they might carry a little bit of fruit. I've heard that it's gone quite extreme on a couple of the boats where even fruit weighs too much.
Right, okay.
Yeah, seriously. So you know, certain fruits that weigh too much, so they're not allowed on. And so it's very much water and maybe some energy bars.
Yep.
And freeze-dried food, and that's it.
Yeah, right.
So no gourmet.
Not quite the same.
But I heard Tabasco can cover up anything.
Ah, okay. Heard it here first. So we're inside the 5-minute gun for the 2019 Noakes Sydney Gold Coast Yacht Race. And behind us, the fleet is racking up for the start. We have 4 60-footers that are in contention for line honours, and that's who we're looking at. So we've got Wild Oats 10, we've got Naval Group, who's Sean Langman, who is the owner of Noakes Group, our sponsor for the race here today. And then we have No Limit, which is David Goates' newly bought, used to be Limit, then was Voodoo last year. And then the final 60-footer is Chinese Whisper. So as you said, David Griffith bought that earlier this year.
Yeah, and Chinese Whisper, just as a sort of another fact, that won the two-handed race.
Yes, it did.
To Osaka, Melbourne to Osaka.
Yes.
And when Rupert Guinness had it.
Rupert Henry.
Rupert Henry.
Yes.
Rupert Henry. So is he, I think he may still be a part owner, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think there's an agreement in place. I'm not sure of the details.
Right. They're businessmen's.
Yes, exactly.
Ones that we wouldn't understand, something.
Yeah, exactly. So just a reminder to get social and get involved. So you can use the hashtag Noakes Sydney Gold Coast. Ask us a couple of questions. Who do you think is going to be first out of their heads? Where do you think they're going to be headed? Remember, the tracker is available 24 hours a day once the race starts. So I know that I'll be glued to it for the next few days. Just wondering how long it's going to take them to get up there. I know the forecast is a little bit light, but Wild Oats 10 navigator Adrian Cahalan was saying just under 2 days for them, their models are saying at the moment.
Yeah, it was definitely under 2 days. I think when I was talking to a couple of guys off Ichiban, they were sort of looking from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m.
Yep.
On what, Monday morning it'll be,
Yes.
so daybreak Monday. Wild Oats quicker. So yeah, I think they were looking about 1 day 10 hours or something like that. So it's incredible how quick they go now, these things, even if the breeze isn't that much. But I think one thing that will happen is there'll be plenty of crew work, once they get past this initial point and they hit the coast. There'll be plenty of driving going on, and so the crews won't be getting a lot of rest.
No, so as was predicted, most of the boats have lined up at the pin end of the line. Now that goes all the way down towards Fort Denison, and the start line, the boat end is at Point Piper. So we are just seeing some boats running the line. Everyone's lined up, ready to bear away and put their spinnakers up. And we're hoping to bring that to you ASAP. At the moment, we've got Naval Group up the pin end of the line with Wild Oats 10 just before them, and that's about Rushcutters Bay area. Further down the line, we have Chinese Whisper towards Clark Island, and No Limit just to windward of them.
Yeah, I saw Oats tack off. I think they don't want to be too advanced up the line. Yeah, I think I just saw Oats tack off, and they don't want to get too far up the line. So it's going to be interesting how they mix it, the 60-footers with the small boats, and that's always the trade-off. it's a long race, but all these guys are super competitive, and the competition's so tight, they don't want to give anything away. So it's you know, time to be a little bit cautious sometimes. You don't need to be taken out or have an infringement, and the speed differential between the boats is enormous.
Yeah, so I'm just looking behind again. The bows are about to come down. We are very, very close to the start. We're going to see some beautifully coloured spinnakers, I'm sure. So I'm just trying to get the timer up for myself. There we go. So we've got some footage of the start. It looks quite light up there. So 38 seconds. So 30 seconds.
You can
Spinnakers
see,
are out.
yep, some are going for it. Shoots are up, some are bagging. I'm seeing a bigger boat can't quite make it out. It's got a wine glass in one of their chutes.
Yeah, so Chinese Whisper is the one to windward, and then when we're looking at the bigger boats, No Limit is the one around Clark Island.
Yep.
Wild Oats 10 has the famous Wild Oats insignia on their spinnaker.
And not a great set from them by their standards either.
No, they do have a mix of their Wild Oats 10 and Wild Oats 11 crew on board, don't they, Woz?
Yeah. So, and I'm looking at the angles. I'm looking at a little 29er further down the track, Olivia, and I think the boats at the pin end will be straight out the heads. There'll be no jibing involved in this.
No, definitely not. So looking, Wild Oats has got their spinnaker set, and they're the furthest pin end of the bigger boats. And we are just talking about the bigger boats because we can see them at the moment. We'll be bringing you all the footage for everyone throughout the whole start as they go outside the heads. So the bigger boats will get out there first, as was said, with no jibes, but they'll be followed very closely by a flurry of 72 bit smaller boats. So there's 4 of the 60 footers and there's 72 others.
And just looking back, for me, it looks like midline. It was the best place to start, not hard at the pin, but sort of, you know, I'd say 2/3 of the way down towards the pin.
Yeah.
Appears to be the best, getting the new pressure out of Rose Bay first. Wild Oats is really pressed up against trying to get over Bradley's head. So it'll be interesting to see how this pans out over the next few minutes, but we can just start to see the 60 starting to stretch out a little bit over the TPs.
So yeah, just talking of the TPs, I can see just so Naval Group doesn't have their spinnaker up just yet, but just around them, yeah, in front is Ichiban. So Matt Allen's Ichiban, the 2017 Rolex Sydney Hobart winner, and very, very competitive boat, was designed specifically for these ocean races. So they've punched out in front of Naval Group, who have just decided to pull out a spinnaker.
Yeah, so they wouldn't have elected to do that. They've just had some issue in being able to hoist that chute quickly. But yeah, very good start for the Ichiban. And now we can actually see further up the line, I don't know if it's on screen, but the boats further up the line now starting to get a little bit softer and lifted. So now the boats towards the pin are now starting to get a little bit of leverage there. Wild Oats now on that shore, starting to really put the hammer down. And we've got to remember that, you know, just to remind everyone, it is 66 feet, so 6 foot bigger than some of the 60s, and it does have a canting keel, so a lot of power there.
Yeah, definitely a race favourite for line honours. It has won line honours, as I mentioned before, twice before in a Sydney to Gold Coast.
So now, Olivia, just looking back there, the boats are in sort of middle of the line. They're starting to get hurt, getting very lifted, getting soft. So that's when now where just a few minutes after the start, the pin end is starting to really come to the fore.
Yes, so as we mentioned, of the bigger boats, Wild Oats 10 was the most lured of the boats, and they just made it around Bradley's Head. Now that's a great feat because now they have the whole of the harbour to come up and get more pressure, whereas some of these boats that started on the windward end of the line might have to do a couple of jives.
Yeah, they're getting well and truly lifted, aren't they? most windward boat, is that is that
That's Chinese Whisper.
In the most windward boat? Yeah. They've all got white shoots, so it's a little bit hard for us almost to see. But yeah, now breeze has gone a little bit more south, a little bit softer. Very puffy across the course actually, it's not a consistent breeze. But everyone, all the adrenaline will have started to settle down. Now everyone will be just getting into their modes and just focusing on what they've got. As you say, the boat's more towards the windward end. Well, hang on, we've got a jibe coming in. That's Ichiban, I believe, has put in an early jibe. So that's interesting. They've elected to get out and try and get some clear air and get some leverage down early, which to me seems a little bit early, but who are we to say?
They might have had a bit of a fleet to windward of them.
Yes, definitely clear, you know, getting gassed by those 60s. They got such a good start. They were in amongst the 60s, and so maybe go down, clear that air, and you'd expect them to be, they're in good pressure going back. I don't know if we're picking it up, but I expect them to do an early jibe and come back any moment. So even Noakes now
are quite light and lifted as well.
They're all quite lifted. We've
So
just got
on
the
your-
naval group on screen.
Yeah, naval group to leeward and Chinese Whisper to windward.
Yeah.
I'm trying to identify who's to windward of them as well, because they're holding in with Chinese Whisper, aren't they?
Yeah. They're starting to get new pressure out of Rose Bay now, Olivia, which will give them a little bit of a push down. We can see Wild Oats is pushing hard to try and come into line with the other 60s. So maybe they're expecting a little bit more east in the breeze as they get closer to the heads. And it does surprise me how hard Ichiban is pushing out towards the western shore as they set up for a jibe now, and they're going to come back and get in phase with the rest of the fleet. Wild Oats now just got new pressure.
Yeah, they're
bowed down. Yep.
very punched forward now. They've lined themselves up on the same line as naval group, so they've climbed up a lot of height in that light pressure, but they had the ability to do that.
Yeah, we've got the riding moment, and that's why it does surprise me that Ichiban extended so far west, because with that bit of east that you always tend to get out of Rose Bay, and more pressure out of Rose Bay through the dip in the hill going out to the ocean.
They were the only ones to jibe.
Exactly. So a bold move to sail away from the fleet this early on, and look, we can see now the Chinese Whisper's naval group and the
No Limit.
The No Limit. Yeah, they've done well, haven't they?
Yeah, so they're all lined up
Yep.
on your screen.
All bow down, all new pressure, all bow down, and actually not making the mark. So this is going to hurt Ichiban. This is definitely going to hurt Ichiban. They've covered miles to the west, and it's not going to be a gainer for them, I don't think. And we can even see their naval group having a flag of their chute. So new pressure, so a bit of disturbed air. Yeah.
So just in behind Chinese Whisper is Envy Scooters. So another TP52, they're from Queensland. So they've been able to keep up with the 60-footers as well. As you can see, beautiful downwind reaching conditions for the start of the Noakes Sydney Gold Coast Yacht Race for 2019.
Yeah.
Make sure you stay up to date with all the information. # Noakes Sydney Gold Coast.
So a bit of patience required there, Olivia, in terms of, you know, a lot of those guys were light and very lifted, and that's what pushed Ichiban, or I would have said made their decision to go west. But then when you get the new pressure, they're looking good again. So now we've got the 60 starting to run us down in the production boat. And what do you see in Watson's Bay? That's the next pressure they're going to get, Olivia, and I think there's more pressure there. The No Limit is bowed down.
Yeah, there are No Limits caught up to Chinese Whisper's line. So Chinese Whisper's used a little bit bow forward position to roll over the top a little bit.
Yeah, and they started about mid-line, didn't they?
They did.
And
they were, the most windward of the 60-footers.
Yeah. Now, for me, Ichiban is not going to make the heads with their chute on. They're going to have to knock the chute off early. Even Wild Oats.
Wow.
Is it on screen? But they're starting to get their heads all sorted out as they go above Sound Pigs. So they're all starting to think about it. They're all starting to think about their next manoeuvre, because they're not going to be able to carry their chutes out between their heads. What they'll have to do is go to their headsels, drop their chutes, and then once they're clear of North Head, as No Limit flags their chute in a really good battle. We got that on screen, really good battle. No, we're on Wallace, really good battle
with Chinese Whisper and No Limit.
Yeah, great battle of the 60s here.
So Chinese Whisper had to rag their spinnaker a little bit. So you're just watching No Limit trying to push through below them.
Yeah.
Now I'm not sure if they're going to be able to get through because, as we said, there is a lot more pressure coming a little bit from the east, the southeast direction, which wasn't forecasted to come through till a little bit more offshore. But they're going to have to drop their spinnakers, as was said. As you can see, they're loading the boat up quite hard now.
Yeah. Well, I think No Limit. Yeah, No Limit. I don't know if it's got a little bit more riding moment than Chinese Whispers. I'm looking at the Windex. They're breathing ahead of Chinese Whispers. We see guys going out on the bow on Chinese Whispers. They're getting ready. No action in the bow of No Limit. So they're leaving it a little bit later. Ichiban out of shot, I believe, struggling to get up.
Yeah, so
yeah, Wild Oats now new pressure, just getting headed a bit, Olivia. They'll have to go for their headsel any moment, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I think I see a little bit of movement on board. They're going to be shuffling forward to get ready to pull that off at the exact right moment so that they can get the fastest line straight past North Head and be able to get a spinnaker up ASAP.
Yeah, and I don't know if we'll be able to get our producer to get it in shot or the drone, but Envy, I can tell you, Envy, the Queensland TP52, has absolutely nailed this start. The 52 is right on the back of the 60s, got a nice little gap over the rest of the 52s, absolutely put Ichiban to bed for this part of the race, and they've done an awesome job.
Yeah, so just behind Envy Scooters, there's the next TP52. We've got Guelo, so that's also a newish TP52 owned by Chris Townsend and Matt Donald. They have a lot of the, well, they did have a lot of the Quest crew, but Quest is sailing, so
right.
They're balancing the crew between the two TP52s, and they're going to be just neck and neck the whole way down this coast.
Well, I heard with Guelo that they've done a mod to that recently. That the number I heard, I didn't get it off the boat, but from one of the opposition boats, that they've taken 450 kilos out of the bulb and done a new keel, gone deeper.
Wow!
And there was a feeling that for this race, this boat will be very, very quick.
Well, and we're seeing that right at the moment. They're just ripping down in behind Envy Scooters.
Yeah, and now we've got Chinese Whispers, probably the first to go for the drop, so going a little bit early. Wild Oats is extended further to the north to try and get away from the lee of South Head, but Chinese Whispers has pulled the trigger early compared to the opposition, gone to the headsel, got their bow up heading towards North Head. Naval group also going for their drop, and looking back, Olivia, they're all starting to fall line astern a bit. The next group is all the TP52s, and one in there, Patrice. I think I see Patrice, 47-footer, done an awesome job in there amongst the mid-fleet of the TP52s. So that's a slippery boat and well campaigned. And they're in good pressure, they're going very quick.
Yeah, so through each of the bays that Sydney Harbour has to offer, there's been a bit of a push of pressure, and behind each of the headlands it's slowed that particular group down. As you can see on the screen, there's quite a big spread across the entire fleet and across the entire harbour, and there's the different pressures, firstly from Double Bay and then Rose Bay, then Watson's Bay, and then eventually they'll get clear out of their heads and they'll be off and running.
There's like little bus stops all the way down, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, be careful not to get off the bus because it slows down, and that's exactly what happened to Ichiban. They decided to get off and go the other way, and that's cost them, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's cost them about 5 places, and puts them back towards the back end of the TP fleet. So that manoeuvre out, that drive away from the fleet and going their own way has been expensive for them.
So as you can see that everyone's starting to drop their spinnakers as they come to the sound, or what we call the sound, the space between the two heads at Sydney Harbour.
Which you spent half your life in, I believe,
Yeah.
with Olympic campaigns.
Yes, so Wild Oats is the first one punching out there, and No Limit following quite close behind. They were the third or fourth boat to drop their spinnaker, so they went down to a similar line of Wild Oats, whereas was said before, Chinese Whisper dropped it a bit early, and they're just to windward of the screen. Look at No Limit just punching out there.
Yeah.
Beautiful conditions.
And I'm just looking at on the horizon this morning when I woke up. I got to have a good look at the ocean, and it was absolutely dead flat. And as this southerly is starting to pick up, and maybe it's actually increasing a little bit harder than the forecast, I can see bumps starting to happen on the horizon. So the sea state is changing very quickly. And so these guys are going to have a glamour run up the coast for the next 18 hours. A little bit of a problem. We're next to a Celestial off screen, but they've got a little bit of problem with their drop. The halyard has gone around the back of their square top mainsail, and it looks like the halyard it's jammed. So that's a real issue for them, because they're starting away from their next mark. I can see the boys in the cockpit trying to sort that out. Yeah, we've got them. If we can go up to the top of the mast, you'll get a better view. If we can get that on screen. Okay, we're back on the fleet now. Yeah, so Celestial in all sorts of bother here. They're trying to wind, I know it's off screen, but just a bit of a radio thing. They're trying to wind it back up, and it's just not moving. The next move of levy will be a guy up the mast to fire that and have to get on with the race. Otherwise, they're going to find themselves up in Manly, and they're going to run out of water and find themselves running into a bit of real estate.
They're setting up to send someone up the top to go and untangle that.
Yeah, and they've got to do it. They're basically sailing towards the lee shore and going backwards.
So out here in the Sound, we've got probably 10 knots, some beautiful sailing conditions, and you can see Naval Group, skippered by Sean Langman, our Noakes Group sponsor for the Noakes Sydney Gold Coast Yacht Race for the next 4 years, as well as last year. He'll be enjoying this one,
He'll be loving it. He just came off a podium finish in the 18-foot skiff regatta in Lake Garda, so he's sort of picking his yachting and enjoying life while also running the business.
So out the heads we had the 60-footers.
So now, Olivia, the next thing is we've talked about the 60s, the 50s. Who's the next lot? So I can see Farrier Price.
Yeah, so Julian Farron Price. So his boat is About Time, and that's oops, sorry, holding on, sorry. As we move out into the Sound, it's getting a bit bumpier for us as well as them.
Yeah, we got 0 seat belts, 0 seats. So they've done a good job getting out of the heads.
Yeah, so that's a Cookson 50,
right.
Julian Farron Price. So there's two Cookson 50s in this race. So we've got Grace O'Malley, owned by Zoe Taylor, named after the famous 1950s pirate.
Okay.
There you go. Sorry, 1500. 1500s pirate, sorry, my bad. And About Time.
1950s pirate,
No, a little bit older than that.
There's half the scallywags in the yacht club, I think.
And then just behind, coming around South Head, we have Smuggler and Stay Calm Hungary.
Yeah. So Walter Lewin, who's the owner of Vento, the Far 400s on that boat.
Yes.
Doing his first Sydney to Gold Coast yacht race with a bunch of the boys from Newcastle, a bit of mixed crew, and first time together. So they're at the back of the TP fleet, but so they've only done a couple of days on the water together. So this is going to be awesome. Yeah, so just to fill you in, Celestial still got issues with their chute, and they're just hemorrhaging time here, and a bit of distance away, but I cannot see anyone up the mast. But that's exactly what you don't need early on, just giving away precious miles.
So on your screen we've got Noel Cornish's St Jude, sail number 6686, followed closely by UBS Wild Thing, owned by Jeff Levis.
That boat has been campaigned for so long, and the boat still looks an absolute glamour. I mean, they're out there every single week doing the winter series or the midweek races, always doing these races north. And it's a timber boat, one of the few timber boats left that are actively racing.
Really was?
Yeah.
There you go. So as you can see, there is a flurry of yachts still coming down the harbour, dropping their spinnakers before they make a slight turn right to head past North Head.
And I'm just seeing, Olivia, just way out in the distance, maybe out of shot, I can see Wild Oats has pulled away and now setting their chute again. So they'll be the first to be able to deploy their asymmetrical and put their bow down and start heading north.
Not the greatest set was.
No. And that was sort of true for them at the start a little bit too. It wasn't as slick as we're used to, but
Yeah.
they're still getting that sorted. But gee, what beautiful conditions to be in a boat like that today. This breeze is increasing to around 15 knots. And let's not forget, it's going to be freaking cold tonight. These guys,
Yes.
you want fully thermaled up, even though it is downwind.
So on our screen we've got Malagai. So Murray Owens has owned Malagai for quite a number of years now.
Yep.
He's campaigning it himself this time.
So
Now, one of my favourite yachts that's coming out of the harbour, I'd say the prettiest yacht in the race,
Yes.
would be Oriton Drumfire. We can see her just in the background with the lighter colour sails in behind. Now, I know it takes them about 2 weeks to strip out the yacht from cruise mode, shall I say, into
Right.
race mode.
Okay. And I'm sure their race mode will be pretty comfortable compared to most.
They have coffees at all times of the day,
Espresso-
beautiful bunks.
An espresso machine and
Yes,
all that. Yeah, beautiful.
they do it in style.
Yeah. And now we're just starting to get, I think, one little shout out I just see Sydney 38 starting to come out. Boat that was one design boat built by Sydney Yachts down in Nowra, Murray Duval design, and still going strong many years later, and there's a good fleet of those.
Yeah, so there's 6 in this year's Noakes Sydney to Gold Coast. So they are making a bit of a comeback, shall I say. They were very competitive one design, and one design racing is starting to really show in Australia and Sydney and bringing it back.
Yeah, well, it's good. I mean, although when those things were first built, it was a lot of the Far 40 type owners of super professional teams were all bought those and raced those. And then they get filtered down to the more Corinthian style of owners and teams. And it's good that they can have second and third lives, and their race within a race will be just as competitive as anybody else's.
So just do a couple of shout outs to the boats that are coming past us. We've got Bush Ranger, Showtime, Carrera S, Oriton Drumfire.
Beautiful boat, isn't it? Have we got that on screen? Yeah.
And then there's a big train just following in behind.
Yeah, that's the tail end is having an incredible battle. There's nothing between them. And it's all relative, isn't it, Olivia? Like these guys, even though, they look like they're behind, this is ultimately about rating and the time race. And we must remember that it wasn't that long ago that the smallest boat in the fleet, one of the smallest boats in the fleet, actually won the overall honours in the Azura, the S&S
34.
34, right.
Yeah, so there's a great story about that boat. Shane Kearns put it on his credit card and restored it over a couple of years. So Komatsu Azura has won the overall IRC Sydney to Gold Coast twice before.
Yeah, right.
So I'm sure he'd be looking for a third time lucky.
Well, that's where, we talked about the weather at the beginning of the broadcast is if that southerly, if this sort of, what we've got now will die out in a couple of days' time, bit of a northerly, so slow the mid-pack down, and then a big southerly later on, that could give a boat like that the push home to
That
give it
they
a
need.
chance. Yeah, to give it a chance. And I actually walked past it when I was doing a little dock walk, and it's just prepared just beautifully, you know, carbon tiller and carbon poles, and everything is just absolutely pristine. So just maybe at a shop, but just offshore now I'm counting, you know, like maybe 10 chutes. 10 boats have got their spinnakers up now. So and all on starboard jibe heading out, and we should talk about the tracker. It's sort of getting to that point where the tracker will be starting to make a bit of sense, Olivia, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so the tracker at the Noakes Sydney Gold Coast Yacht Race website, so goldcoast.cyca.com.au. It updates all the time, and it's 24 hours a day. You can pick your individual boats to watch throughout the whole race, what divisions they're in. You can see if they're leading their division, how they're going on line honours, what's their estimated time of arrival. The information is just endless.
Yeah, well, it's good. As you said, you can sort of pick your favourites, and so you can sort of, you know, say pick the 15 and just follow the progress of that, and see, you know, even relatively how the little boats are going against the big boats. Another thing, I was talking to David Kellett, just another little fact, that the skeds, they have, you know, daily skeds, and traditionally it's always been to a radio relay ship that follows the fleet in any of these ocean races.
Yep.
And this year, for the first time, all the skeds are being coordinated through a VHF communication centre in Terry Hill, so it's all land-based and land-linked. So that's the very first for Australia.
Wow.
Yeah, the radio relay ship is still going up, the JBW, as a backup, but so this is a test for new technologies.
So we've got 2018 Noakes Sydney Gold Coast Yacht Race overall winner Hutzpah. So it's Bruce Taylor's, I think it's maybe his 7th boat of that name.
Right.
And he won the IRC overall Noakes Sydney Gold Coast Yacht Race last year, but he's still yet to win a Rolex Sydney Hobart. Could this be the year? The 75th Rolex Sydney Hobart's coming up pretty quickly. Could this be the year for Bruce Taylor and Hutzpah?
Well, it's one of those races you just got to keep backing up, but if you're not in it, you can't win it. So.
Exactly.
And it is a quick little boat. It's, I believe it's a Rockall Pew, like 40 something. I remember when it first came out, there was a little rocket ship, but maybe at the time the rule didn't suit that size of boat, and that's one of the sort of funny things about ocean racing and the rule. It does change over time, and certain size boats suit the rule at the time. But had a lot of its success, and as you said, if you could win the Hobart on that one, that would be the complete the
set.
crown, yeah, the set in the trophy cabinet.
Yeah. So coming out past us in the middle of the heads, we have Wax Lyrical, we have Imagination, Arch Rival, MGD Mad Jack, we've got Popeye, Supernova. Everyone's coming out in a line, just wanting to get out there as soon as possible to be able to set their spinnaker again.
Yeah. And that's another thing that's worth noting too, I suppose, Olivia, is all the boats, all the front boats that we've seen, all will run asymmetrical spinnakers.
Yes.
So we'll be starting angles. And then as we get to the smaller boats, the majority of the smaller boats, where what we call more displacement type boats, they will have traditional type spinnakers up where they'll be able to pull the pole back and sail pretty much straight to the mark.
Yep, settle in for the ride.
Exactly. Pole back, settle in, get their afternoon cocktail sorted out. On some. Non-alcoholic.
Obviously. Although, don't joke, I did hear that there was some spirits being brought onto some boats. Whether they were contraband or not, I'm not at liberty to discuss.
Ah. Under the floorboards.
Yes.
So yeah, so we've got the bulk of the fleet has exited the harbour and into the ocean. and heading north on their way. So they'll all, but once they do this and get their chutes up, they'll be settling into their rhythms, whatever that may be on their boats. We think, you know, later on, probably they'll all sail with everybody on deck and fully crewed, let's say, for the next few hours. And then probably, you know, around, you know, sunset in a few hours' time, they'll be starting to settle into their watch systems, where they'll be doing the rotations. Normally downwind, team will be, you know, split into two groups where, except for, let's say, the navigator or the sailing master, maybe the bowmen or floaters, and they'll be doing their rotations, whether it's 4 on, 4 off, or whatever it may be. And also, too, just I just spotted the JBW, the radio relay ship, is just starting to come out between the heads. And so that's a good support from the Winnie family for many, many years.
Yes, they support, you know, endless support, and thank them very much for their support, especially on the radio relay vessel for the Rolex Sydney Hobart every year.
And the Glamour television production boat for the day.
Yes. Just an update. So those who were watching before, we were watching TP52 Celestial get their spinnaker halyard caught around the back corner of their main. Now they ended up down at the, what we call the Bombora, so down near Middle Head. Dobroyd Head, and they just made their way. They had to do a couple of tacks because they were down in that Manly area. But they're rounding South Head now, so they'll be desperate to get that spinnaker up and try and catch up some time.
Yeah, very expensive error, and particularly as they've had to go the wrong way to get back in with the group, that will be hurt big time, and it can be that really could potentially cost them any chance of a victory, you know, as early as, you know, 20 minutes into the race. So that's how tight the competition will be. And I suppose just for a general recap, Olivia, I mean, we had middle of the line look favoured early. Wild Oats, who didn't have a great set, powered through. Okay, we mentioned they have got a bit more waterline, a bit more riding moment, but they punched through from the leeward end. In the TP52s, Ichiban had nailed the start, but for whatever reasons that we're not sure, we're thinking maybe dirty air, they've elected to drive away from the fleet, and
they were the only ones.
Yes, exactly. And then the rest of the fleet got headed. So that took them from, in their group, they were with the 60s, took them from leading their group to being spat out the back of that group. So that was a very costly tactical decision by the highly favoured Ichiban. And then we looked at the No Limit, which was new owner, new back on the scene, had done a really good job fighting in the 60 group to get out, I think, second. Chinese Whispers first to drop their chute to go out their heads. And then we had the, you know, really tight back end of the fleet.
Yeah, having 76 yachts enter the 2019 Noakes City Gold Coast Yacht Race, it makes the whole harbour quite busy, doesn't it?
Yeah, it goes from quiet to busy very quick, and we're just looking at, I think maybe the last boat out.
I haven't seen Gunrunner yet, and they're normally, they're the smallest boat in the fleet, 9.3 metres.
Yeah, right.
So I haven't seen them yet, but we'll keep you updated when we can. She was one of the last boats out that we can see right now. So they'll be settling in for a long ride, was. Yeah. 384 nautical miles long.
And I think it's worth noting, Olivia, that, you know, for a lot of these teams, it's not just about pure performance, is it? It's about the adventure, it's about going to sea, about the camaraderie of your team and the whole project. And so, you know, you could go through the 76 boats and you could break it down into maybe, you know, 4 different categories of what motivates them to go and do this race, and to, you know, to be a part of this great sport. So
I've just spotted Gunrunner, was. She is not yet at Camp Cove, or just about there.
Right.
Just about there. So for those that don't know Sydney Harbour that well, the South Head has a little beach just inside in the harbour side, and Gunrunner is just coming past there. So last boat out, smallest boat.
How big did you say it was?
9.3 metres.
Yeah, right. That's pretty small.
Yeah, and that's the Army Sailing Club. So
Well,
they
that's
put
a tough one. So
yeah. They put 200 soldiers through
Isn't that-
inshore and offshore races, about 70 each year.
Isn't that good?
So they've been around for a couple of years now, competing in the Audi Centre Sydney Blue Water Point Score. Of this is the opening act, the Noakes Sydney Gold Coast Yacht Race.
Yeah, so they're going to have a pretty lonely race, but
There she is.
yeah, there's
on
no
your
one else
screen.
around their size, and so yeah, they'll be hoping for that southerly big time in about 3 days' time to get them home.
It's quite a long wait for that one, though.
It is going to be a long wait for them. It'll be interesting to see. I noticed they haven't got a spinnaker up, but yeah.
So we've got Gunrunner just on your screen for the last boat out of the harbour.
Yeah, so it's we were lucky with the breeze. Got a good start there. We didn't see any major incidents.
No, not at all.
It's it all sort of panned out pretty much how we thought, except for a couple of spatters in the works that we discussed. And they can settle into a nice offshore race now, because it definitely will be the first part of it, definitely offshore, and then we're expecting, in the early hours of tomorrow morning that the leading boats will be heading back to the east coast, and it'll become a true coastal race where they'll just be bumping off the beaches and the rocks all the way up to the Gold Coast.
Yes. So, ladies and gentlemen, as Gunrunner exits the harbour, we're going to conclude the Cruising Yacht Club of Australia's live stream of the start of the Noakes Sydney Gold Coast Yacht Race, brought to you by Noakes Group. My name's Olivia Price, and a massive thank you to Warwick Rooklyn and the production team at Aero Media here on board the boat. It's been a rocky ride, but we're glad we were able to bring it to you. So just a reminder that each yacht has their own tracking unit on board, so make sure that you're glued to it as much as I will be, and watch all the yachts up the coast through the yacht tracker that can be found at goldcoast.cyca.com.au, as well as all the latest news, images and updates, as well as video highlights from today's start. Be sure to check in the social media channels, so hashtag Noakes Sydney Gold Coast through Instagram, Facebook and Twitter, of course. And finally, we'd want to say a massive thank you to Noakes Group for their support of the race and the live broadcast, and wishing all the teams and competitors a safe event, and we'll see you on the Gold Coast. Thanks for tuning in. Goodbye.